Good morning, everybody. Today we want to discuss about the best practices on leveraging mapping. Like everything in OSCAL, we have flexibility on how to use the elements of the schema. And some approaches are better than the other. We have 3 scenarios that I'm going to go through. 2 are for cloud providers, and 1 is from a user point of view. So the first one is more from a user SMB point of view, because it's the easiest one. Yep, just got that. It's not going to work because I don't have USB. Okay, not a problem. Okay. So you see, we still need manual processes. We cannot automate everything. The way that I try to organize that, let me see if I have a, is there a pointer on this?
Yes, there's a pointer, the red.
Okay, got it. Right, so it's in 2 steps, right? We first have our baseline. Typically, we start with NIST 853. If we have somebody from Europe, yes, you can start with, C5 in Germany or whatever is the baseline. And hopefully, right, we have a component definition associated with the all the software, services, processes in the environment, and we can use those automated in policy engines. Any of the CSPMs, or in the open source, we have OPA, we have Auditory, and we generate the posture. So now we want to bring in PCI, and here is where mappings come into the picture to help with reuse, right? The whole point of mappings is that when we get the posture and the evidence, rather than starting the scratch with the million other programs, right, we want to provide this mapping, and through the mapping to be able to be more efficient. So the first thing that we are going to do is to have the PCI or the SOC 2 or ISO map to NIST. And as you may have seen, NIST already provides a pretty good list of programs mapped already to NIST. If you don't, you can ask me. I'll share the link. And the point is to identify which controls are relevant from RIST, from the PCI point of view, fully, partially, or not covered. So one new part in the current prototype that was not there before is the gap. So besides the map that we have between the controls, there is a list of gaps. So this way we have full coverage of all the controls in the PCI in the mapping artifact. So now the point is to be able to generate the component definition. And the reason for that, if any of you have tried to use mappings to do your efficient reuse of posture and evidence, you have noticed that the story from the control level mapping is sometimes different when you go to the actual implementation level. Things are not exactly the same. And just a few examples that we have seen, for instance, from a ENS point of view or from a HIPAA point of view, if you are looking at the encryption controls, in NIST, having the configuration, proof of configuration of your database that encrypts is enough, right? So that's the evidence. I get the configuration, can be from the Terraform, from the CI/CD plan, all fine. We go to HIPAA. They are not interested in configuration. They want to see 5 samples from the live database that they are encrypted. So this means that having a control from the NIST mapped to HIPAA, it's not going to help. So this means that when we are doing the actual component definition with the mapping to the rules for a particular database and the checks in the policy engine and the evidence associated with that, we are going to have feedback to the team, to the compliance team. So we are talking here about the technical team going back to the compliance team, say no, those 2 controls are not mapped. So this is updated. In our case, because we maintain this in Git, using Trestle, right? This is an issue that is open. The compliance team updates the mapping, and so then it reflects the actual mapping. The other example is ENS. Same thing, the encryption looks very relevant, but if you go into the details of the implementation, the algorithms that are required in the United States and the algorithms that are required in Spain, very different. So you cannot reuse the evidence and the posture. So once we have the component definition with the, we start, right, because we have most of the rules established already with the NIST. The job of the technical teams, the process teams, is to understand how many of the rules, the checks that are used for NIST are relevant for PCI. Some of them will be removed, some new ones will be added. The point is to maintain a delta with the specific rules. So now when we are doing the posture, I'm going to use the posture from NIST with the mappings to populate and reuse those that are relevant, posture and evidence, and then I'm going to just reuse the delta in order to do the assessment for the PCI. And then all together they get the PCI. Any question? And this was the simple use case. Yes?
Yeah, maybe I missed it. So what is the posture? Is that an artifact?
Pass-fail. This is the assessment result.
Okay. So
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. I think we have assessment result there and it was too long. Okay. Any other question? So now we are moving to system provider, to cloud providers, or large corporates in general, and those come with their own set of controls, right? So most of you have seen, you internally have your own list. Yes, can be inspired from NIST, but it's a kind of a mixture of a lot of things that are out there and your own proprietary point of view on some of the controls that you find relevant for your industry or for that are different from what is out there. In the case of IBM, it's called ITSS, IT Security Standard, that we have initially, we have inside of IBM. And that's why it's the ITSS on the slide. So in this case, when we start with this baseline, we have that as the component definition and the assessment result. And then as we get NIST, we map NIST to the ITSS. Then we have PCI mapped to ITSS. And we maintain in the same fashion the delta so that we understand what is the difference. So it's very similar if we have time, but I don't think we have time, but I'll give you the link to the actual artifacts, to the OSCAL artifacts. These artifacts in the case of the scenario 2 are very similar with the prior one, just that the reference, the baseline, is your own organization set of controls, proprietary controls, not the one coming from the industry. Now, the reason for the third scenario, and I wish Michaela was here, because that's I think where the discussion will come, or it would be very helpful to have your feedback here or as part of the foundation discussions. Actually, this was one of the things that I planned to bring to the technical discussions. Never had time until now. So when we are maintaining these separate mappings, PCI to whatever baseline it's, whether it is NIST or corporate proprietary, HIPAA, ISO, SOC 2, and so on, you realize that the overlaps are not only between those programs and the baseline, there are overlaps between those programs themselves. So it's not the optimal optimization because now I have overlaps between PCI, ISO, and so on that I still do as part of those deltas, right? So the reason for the third scenario is, and this is what we are doing in IBM, and I'll share also, Mihaela is not here, but I know her point of view and why she's reluctant for that, so I want to give you all points of view. My interest here is to understand what is the thing that works best for us. In this case, we are looking for a harmonized baseline. So I'm starting with NIST. Sorry, I didn't ask if there is any question on the second scenario. No. So we are starting with NIST. The PCI mapping to NIST is exactly like the one that we had it in the first scenario. But now when I bring ISO, I am not comparing ISO to the original NIST. I'm comparing ISO to the harmonized, where I have the original NIST plus the delta from the PCI. And so in this case, we are maintaining the harmonized. So if I can go back here, when we are doing here the assessment, right, we are doing the assessment on top of the base plus the deltas, okay? In the case of the harmonized, I'm always keeping this harmonized up to date, and with the control mapping, I can do the individual ones as well. So having the harmonized doesn't mean that I only get the common set. I still need to maintain the individual, the mappings and the individual component definitions. So there is no read. But from the set of assessments that I'm going to do, one, I eliminate the duplicates that are among all the programs, because now I do PCI versus harmonized. So if my harmonized has now NIST, PCI, and ISO, right, the chances when I bring HIPAA is that most of it is already covered. But if I just do HIPAA to NIST, I'm going to have gaps. So now with that said, does it make sense? Do you see what?
So, yeah, I have a question. So you're harmonizing at the profile level before you resolve it?
Oh, very good question. We always go to the step of component definition. Always, because the mapping that you just get at the profile level is not fully relevant when you go to the technology, right? Most of it, okay, perfect, okay. Okay, so, yeah. So, yeah, so now, because I promised Michaela's comment, and then you can continue with the comment, is that if we are maintaining the harmonized and we do all the mappings of the new programs, C5, ENS, always to the harmonized, and we add a few controls to maintain the harmonized, Michaela's point is that the mapping becomes diluted. Because now when I bring the N+1 program, right, the presence of the controls in the catalog is through the lenses of the PCI mapping to NIST and ISO mapping to PCI and NIST. And as we go, we kind of dilute from my experience, the overlaps are pretty much if you are looking at encryption in encryption. I mean, it's not, besides the ENS example that there is a different type of algorithm, we are kind of looking at the same things, right? This is not botany, and we have like a million type of differentiations in what we are doing. But I think these are the three, to wrap up, these are the three scenarios, and Michaela, I think the difference is that initially we just presented the harmonized because this is what we do in IBM. And Michaela said, no, I think we need the other one. So I have the simple one that we discussed and the corporate, the cloud provider with its own. And this is the one. So I think what I would like as part of as the foundation to understand what would be the best practices, and if harmonized, if we have the level with the discussion with Michaela is, do we have a metric to evaluate dilution?